For nearly 5 years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle sold the world a story of escape, resilience, and rebirth. They framed themselves as survivors of a cold and unforgiving monarchy, a young family forced to flee for safety, dignity, and independence. Cameras followed them, platforms paid them, audiences listened, and at the center of that story was a sprawling Montecito mansion, a sun-soaked symbol of freedom, luxury, and arrival. But tonight, that carefully constructed image begins to crack. According to newly circulating reports and alleged legal correspondence now drawing intense scrutiny, the very house meant to represent Harry and Meghan's triumph may soon become the stage for their most humiliating reckoning yet. And the man at the center of this unfolding storm is not a royal, not a tabloid villain, not a palace insider, but the Hollywood billionaire who once saved them when no one else would. Tyler Perry. Sources claim that Perry, long described as Harry and Meghan's guardian angel during their darkest hour, has formally demanded repayment of a massive private loan. A demand so blunt and unforgiving that it has stunned even seasoned royal watchers. The alleged amount? $14 million plus interest. The alleged deadline? 30 days. And the alleged consequence of failure? Foreclosure. If these claims prove accurate, Harry and Meghan are no longer fighting public opinion or palace protocol. They are fighting the clock. And this time, sympathy may be in dangerously short supply. When Harry and Meghan first arrived in North America in early 2020, they were not the global power players many assumed them to be. Despite their titles and international fame, insiders say the couple found themselves financially exposed almost overnight. Royal security was gone, the duchy income was cut, promised deals had not yet materialized, and behind closed doors, the couple was reportedly scrambling for stability. Canada had been temporary. Los Angeles was chaotic. Paparazzi pressure intensified. According to Harry himself, they felt hunted, unsafe, and betrayed. It was during this moment of uncertainty that Tyler Perry entered their lives, not just as a famous supporter, but as a practical solution to an urgent problem. Perry allegedly offered them access to his property, his security team, and crucially, his resources. He was portrayed publicly as a generous ally, someone who believed in their narrative and wanted to help them rebuild, far from royal control. In interviews later, Harry and Meghan praised his kindness, describing him as a stranger who became family. But, according to multiple sources now revisiting that period, the assistance went far beyond hospitality. By mid-2020, Harry and Meghan had their sights set on Montecito, a gated enclave of wealth, discretion, and status. The home they chose was breathtaking, sprawling, and expensive. And while the couple projected confidence about their future earnings, insiders claimed traditional lenders were far less convinced. Banks allegedly hesitated. Underwriters reportedly questioned income stability. Royal titles did not translate into financial guarantees. Netflix and Spotify discussions were ongoing, but not finalized. The couple, sources say, needed cash. And they needed it fast. That is where the alleged loan comes in. According to claims now surfacing, Tyler Perry provided a private loan estimated at $14 million to facilitate the purchase of the Montecito mansion in June 2020. Not a gift, not charity, a loan. Reportedly documented, structured, and time-bound. The terms, according to those familiar with the arrangement, were straightforward but firm. The loan would allow Harry and Meghan to secure the property immediately, with repayment due at a later fixed date once their commercial ventures stabilized. That date, sources claim, was set for December 31st, 2024. At the time, the expectation was simple. Netflix money would flow, podcasts would thrive, books would sell, and the loan would be repaid quietly, without drama. That did not happen. As the years passed, Harry and Meghan's financial narrative began to diverge sharply from their public image. While they announced multi-million-dollar deals, insiders say the reality was far more complex. Payments were reportedly staggered, contingent on performance, milestones, and delivery. Some projects stalled, others underperformed. Spotify famously parted ways. Netflix projects slowed. Production costs ballooned. Legal fees mounted. Meanwhile, the Montecito lifestyle continued. Property taxes, staff, security, maintenance, travel, and image management, all running into millions annually. According to financial analysts who track celebrity wealth, income does not equal cash on hand, and high earners can still face liquidity crises if expenses outpace accessible funds. Behind the scenes, sources claim the repayment deadline loomed larger with each passing month. By late 2024, insiders say communication between Tyler Perry's representatives and the Sussex camp had grown tense. Extensions were allegedly discussed, reassurances reportedly given. But when December 31st came and went, the money did not arrive. Then came the letter. According to reports now circulating online, Perry's attorneys issued a formal demand notice dated January 15, 2025. The tone, sources say, was professional but uncompromising. The loan was officially in default. Interest had accrued. The total amount due was now allegedly $16.2 million. Harry and Meghan were given 30 days. Pay in full, or face foreclosure proceedings. No public statements, no media spin, just legal process. The shockwaves from that alleged demand were immediate. Insiders claim Harry was blindsided, believing a renegotiation or quiet extension was still possible. Meghan, sources say, viewed the move as a betrayal. Not just financial, but personal. After all, Tyler Perry wasn't just a creditor. He was the godfather to their daughter, a vocal defender, a symbol of loyalty when the royal family was cast as cruel and distant. So why would he do this? Those close to Perry suggest a very different narrative. According to them, the actor-producer had grown increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. The loan, they say, was never meant to linger indefinitely. It was a bridge, not a permanent subsidy. And as years passed without repayment, advisors allegedly urged Perry to protect himself. One source familiar with Perry's business mindset described it bluntly. At some point, generosity becomes exposure. There are also claims that Perry felt misled about the Sussexes' financial trajectory. Projects that were supposed to generate immediate returns fizzled. Public sympathy waned. The brand that once commanded enormous leverage became polarizing, even toxic in some markets. And unlike the palace, Hollywood runs on contracts, not sentiment. If foreclosure proceedings were to begin, the process would be swift and public. Legal experts explain that once a notice of default is filed, the clock cannot be easily stopped. The property would move toward auction within 120 to 150 days, unless the debt is settled. If the home sells for less than the amount owed, additional financial consequences could follow. For Harry and Meghan, the optics would be devastating. The same house showcased in glossy features as a sanctuary of healing would become a symbol of overreach. Headlines would shift from empowerment to eviction. Critics would seize the moment. Supporters would struggle to explain how a couple with global fame and past mega deals could lose their home to foreclosure. And perhaps most damaging of all, the narrative of independence would collapse. Because independence does not come from private loans. It comes from sustainable income. As of now, no official confirmation has been issued by Harry, Meghan, or Tyler Perry regarding these specific claims. But the silence itself has fueled speculation. Royal watchers note that in past crises, the Sussex camp moved quickly to deny unfavorable stories. This time, there has been no rebuttal. Just whispers. Just deadlines. Just the ticking clock of legal reality. If the alleged 30-day window closes without payment, the next chapter will not be written by PR teams or docuseries producers. It will be written in court filings, auction notices, and public records. And that is something no amount of storytelling can erase. Because money problems can sometimes be fixed. Reputation problems rarely can. According to insiders now speaking privately, the alleged demand from Tyler Perry did more than threaten foreclosure. It detonated what little unity remained behind the scenes. The Montecito mansion was never just a home. It was the physical anchor of Harry and Meghan's post-royal identity. Losing it would not simply mean downsizing. It would mean admitting that the entire reinvention failed. Sources describe the atmosphere inside the household as panicked, bitter, and fractured. Conversations reportedly turned from solutions to blame. Advisors were dismissed. New consultants were brought in. Emergency calls were placed to contacts who once eagerly took their calls, only to now offer polite delays and non-committal responses. Hollywood, it seems, has moved on. Industry insiders claim the Sussex brand no longer carries the leverage it once did. Where executives once feared backlash for saying no, they now feel insulated. Viewership numbers softened. Public sentiment polarized further. Streaming platforms became cautious. And the couple's once vaunted ability to command upfront cash reportedly vanished. This is where reality collided with image. Harry and Meghan's finances, according to analysts familiar with celebrity wealth structures, appear to suffer from a fundamental problem. Their income is project-based, not institutional. They do not have a duchy. They do not have inherited estates generating passive revenue. They do not have decades-long production pipelines. What they have are contracts. Fragile things dependent on performance, delivery, and audience goodwill. When projects stall, cash dries up. And when cash dries up, lenders stop listening. Sources claim that following the alleged January 15th demand letter, frantic efforts were made to secure refinancing, private banks were approached, high net worth lenders were contacted, even foreign financing options were allegedly explored. The answer, insiders say, was consistently the same. Too risky. Too controversial. Too unstable. One financial advisor reportedly summarized the problem in a single sentence. Their name creates headlines, not security. As the weeks passed, the reality of foreclosure reportedly began to sink in. Legal experts quietly explained the process. Advisors walked through timelines. Accountants reviewed liquidity, and the truth emerged. Even selling assets wouldn't generate cash fast enough without catastrophic losses. Then came the most devastating realization of all. Tyler Perry wasn't bluffing. According to sources close to Perry's camp, the decision to proceed with legal enforcement was not emotional. It was methodical. Advisors had warned him that prolonged non-payment could complicate recovery. The longer he waited, the greater the exposure. At a certain point, friendship could no longer override fiduciary responsibility. And so, the line was drawn. For Harry, this moment reportedly reopened old wounds. Insiders say he viewed the situation through the lens of betrayal. Another authority figure, another promised protector, now enforcing rules without mercy. To him, it allegedly felt eerily familiar. Once again, support turned conditional. Meghan, on the other hand, is described by sources as furious. Not panicked, but outraged. Those close to her claim she believed the loan would never be enforced publicly. That discretion was implied, if not guaranteed. The move toward foreclosure, insiders say, shattered her belief that relationships could always be managed through narrative. This difference in perception reportedly fueled intense arguments. Blame allegedly ricocheted between them. Harry questioned spending decisions. Meghan questioned strategy. Advisors were accused of incompetence. Each side believed the other underestimated the risk. And beneath it all lay an unspoken fear neither wanted to voice aloud. What if this really ends here? Because foreclosure is not just financial, it is symbolic. If the Montecito home goes to auction, every detail becomes public record. Loan amounts, dates, defaults, the image of careful curation collapses. Critics who warned that the Sussex lifestyle was unsustainable would feel vindicated. Allies would quietly distance themselves, and future partners would hesitate, wary of being the next benefactor turned creditor. The godfather suing the parents is not a good look. As whispers of the situation spread, Hollywood's response was reportedly swift and subtle. Invitations slowed, calls went unanswered, projects stalled indefinitely. One insider described it as the soft freeze, not cancellation, but neglect. And neglect in this industry is fatal. Meanwhile, royal watchers note a striking contrast across the Atlantic. While Harry and Meghan allegedly face financial freefall, the royal family continues, unmoved. King Charles maintains his duties. Prince William expands his influence. The institution Harry denounced as cruel and controlling now appears. In cruel irony. Stable. Some insiders speculate that Harry may soon face a reckoning far deeper than foreclosure, the realization that leaving the system did not free him from dependence. It merely changed the lender. The timeline, if these allegations continue to unfold, is merciless. Once foreclosure proceedings begin, options narrow rapidly. Selling the property before auction would require price reductions. Quiet settlements would still require massive liquidity. Public sympathy campaigns could backfire, reminding audiences of past contradictions. And there is one final, devastating possibility insiders whisper but rarely say aloud. What if Tyler Perry wins? What if the house sells? What if the debt is recovered? What if Harry and Meghan are forced to relocate? Quietly, abruptly, without ceremony? The myth of Montecito would die overnight. No Oprah interviews. No glossy spreads. No carefully staged garden shots. Just another celebrity couple downsizing after overestimating their leverage. As of now, no official confirmations have been issued. Silence remains the chosen strategy, but silence does not stop legal clocks. Silence does not stop foreclosure filings. And silence does not stop public interpretation. If this situation reaches court, it will no longer be a story Harry and Meghan control. It will be a story told in documents. And documents do not care about feelings. They care about deadlines. They care about signatures. They care about money. The final irony is impossible to ignore. Harry and Meghan left the royal family to escape what they described as a system that trapped them, controlled them, and demanded loyalty in exchange for security. Now, according to these allegations, they face losing everything because of private system. One without titles, courtiers, or tradition. Simply demands repayment. No empathy, no exemptions, no fairy tale endings, just consequences. Exclusive, Meghan Markle in tears after shocking claims about Archie and Lilibet have been exposed. A former insider has allegedly revealed secrets that could rock the monarchy to its core. Royal experts are stunned, and the palace is staying silent. Tonight, we reveal the explosive allegations, the hidden truths behind the Sussex household, and why this could change everything. Stay tuned, because this story is bigger than you think. The story did not begin with a scandal, a headline, or a royal announcement. It began quietly, the way the most destabilizing controversies often do, with whispers. At first, they were confined to obscure online forums and fringe commentators, dismissed as cruel speculation aimed at a woman who had already endured relentless public scrutiny. But over time, the whispers hardened into questions, and the questions refused to go away. In recent months, those questions have returned with renewed force, propelled by what is being described, carefully and without verification, as a leaked personal account linked to someone who once worked inside the Sussex household. No document has been publicly authenticated. No original journal has been produced. And yet, the mere existence of such claims has sent shockwaves through royal commentary circles, not because of what has been proven, but because of what remains unresolved. At the center of the storm are Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's two children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, and a growing online narrative that suggests the British monarchy may be facing a legitimacy crisis rooted not in rebellion, but in doubt. Sources close to royal media insist that Meghan has been deeply distressed by the resurgence of these allegations, particularly as they have begun to migrate from anonymous corners of the internet into mainstream commentary. The suggestion that her children's place within royal history could be questioned is not merely offensive. It is existential. For a monarchy built on lineage, symbolism, and continuity, perception alone can be as damaging as fact. What has fueled this renewed controversy is the claim that a former domestic employee, allegedly connected to the Sussex's Montecito residence, kept private notes during a period of intense pressure and secrecy. These notes, according to those repeating the story, describe inconsistencies in timelines, emotional tension behind closed doors, and moments that, if interpreted uncharitably, contradict the public narrative presented by the couple. It must be stressed, none of these claims have been substantiated. There is no confirmation of authorship, accuracy, or even existence. but royal historians note that the monarchy has always been vulnerable to rumors that challenge legitimacy, from false heirs to whispered affairs, because the institution depends not only on law, but on belief. And belief, once shaken, is difficult to restore. The origins of this controversy trace back years to Meghan Markle's first pregnancy announcement in 2018. What should have been a universally celebratory moment instead unfolded under the harshest possible spotlight. From the beginning, Meghan's experience differed dramatically from that of previous royal mothers. Her appearances were scrutinized frame by frame. Her clothing choices were dissected. Her body became public property in a way that many supporters argue crossed into outright cruelty. Critics of the speculation point out, correctly, that pregnancy varies wildly from person to person. Medical experts have repeatedly emphasized that there is no single correct way to look, move, or recover during pregnancy. To suggest otherwise, they argue, reflects deep-seated misogyny and unrealistic expectations placed on women, particularly women under public surveillance. Yet despite these valid arguments, the speculation persisted, not because of a single incident, but because of a cumulative effect, shifting dates, unclear explanations, and a level of privacy that, while understandable on a human level, proved disastrous in the context of royal tradition. The British royal family operates on ritualized transparency. Birth announcements, medical confirmations, and public appearances outside hospitals are not merely customs. They are symbolic acts designed to reassure the public that the line of succession is beyond question. When Harry and Meghan chose a different path, it created a vacuum, and in that vacuum, suspicion took root. The 2018 tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and Tonga is frequently cited as a turning point. Meghan was newly pregnant, navigating exhaustion, intense heat, and an unforgiving schedule. Supporters describe the tour as evidence of her resilience under pressure. Critics, however, have scrutinized the physical demands of the trip, comparing them to later descriptions in Prince Harry's memoir and questioning whether the timelines align. Medical professionals caution strongly against such armchair analysis. Pregnancy fatigue can fluctuate dramatically. Some women function at high levels well into later stages, while others experience severe symptoms early on. Recovery timelines after childbirth also vary enormously, influenced by genetics, healthcare access, and personal circumstances. Still, the internet is not governed by medical nuance. It is governed by pattern recognition, real or imagined. The release of Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, added fuel to an already smoldering fire. Intended as an unfiltered account of pain, loss, and estrangement, the book offered intimate glimpses into moments previously shielded from public view. But in doing so, it also opened the door to interpretation. Certain passages describing labor, medical interventions, and immediate post-birth experiences were seized upon by online commentators. Critics argue that these details raised questions. Defenders insist they were taken out of context, distorted, and weaponized. Publishing insiders have noted that memoirs, by nature, prioritize emotional truth over clinical precision, a distinction often lost in hostile readings. What cannot be denied is that Spare became a catalyst. For those already inclined to doubt, it was confirmation. For those sympathetic to Harry and Meghan, it was proof that no amount of honesty would ever satisfy their critics. Behind the scenes, public relations experts suggest the Sussexes found themselves trapped in an impossible dilemma: address the rumors directly and risk amplifying them, ignore them, and allow them to metastasize unchecked. The strategy chosen: limited response, selective openness, and eventual withdrawal from royal duties. May have protected their mental health, but it came at a reputational cost. In the digital age, silence is rarely neutral. It is interpreted. As the Sussexes retreated from official royal life, the monarchy itself entered a period of transition. Queen Elizabeth II's death marked the end of an era, and King Charles III ascended the throne amid questions about relevance, unity, and the future of the institution. Against this backdrop, any challenge, real or perceived, to the integrity of the royal line carries heightened sensitivity. Constitutional scholars point out that while Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet are far removed from the throne, in practical terms, symbolism matters. The monarchy's authority rests not on power, but on continuity. Anything that undermines that continuity, even through rumor, demands attention. This is why Buckingham Palace has not dismissed the controversy outright. At least not publicly. Silence from the palace does not indicate endorsement of the claims. Rather, it reflects a long-standing strategy: never legitimize speculation by acknowledging it. But royal watchers warn that this approach carries risks in a media environment vastly different from that of previous decades. Today's narratives are not shaped solely by newspapers and broadcasters, but by decentralized networks capable of sustaining controversy indefinitely. Meanwhile, the personal toll on Prince Harry is said to be profound. Sources close to him describe a man increasingly isolated. Geographically, emotionally, and institutionally, estranged from his family, mistrusted by segments of the public, and fiercely protective of his children, Harry finds himself fighting battles on multiple fronts. For Meghan, the situation is described as emotionally devastating. To have one's motherhood questioned publicly, repeatedly, and without definitive resolution is a burden few could endure without breaking. Allies argue that the controversy reflects society's failure to respect boundaries. Critics counter that royal status carries obligations that cannot be selectively abandoned. And so the story continues to spiral, not because of what has been proven, but because of what has been left unanswered. As online speculation grows louder, a new and more unsettling question has begun to surface among constitutional commentators and royal historians alike. It is not about gossip or journals or memoirs. It is about law, ancient law, a statute few members of the public have ever heard of, but one that still technically exists within the framework of the British monarchy. A law that, on paper, grants the reigning monarch extraordinary authority over royal descendants. And that is where this story begins to move from rumor into something far more serious. What transformed this controversy from online speculation into something the palace could no longer casually dismiss was not a rumor, but a law so old, so rarely discussed, that even seasoned royal observers once believed it irrelevant to modern Britain. Yet, as the allegations surrounding Archie and Lilibet intensified, constitutional commentators began quietly revisiting it, not because they expected it to be used, but because of what it symbolized. In 1717, during the reign of King George I, a royal prerogative was established, granting the reigning monarch theoretical guardianship over royal grandchildren. The law was designed for a very different era, one in which royal heirs were political assets and dynastic stability outweighed personal autonomy. Over time, it faded into obscurity, cited more often in academic texts than in legal practice, but crucially, it was never repealed. Modern legal experts are quick to stress that invoking such a doctrine today would be extraordinarily unlikely. It would face immediate legal challenges, public outrage, and constitutional scrutiny. Yet the fact that it still exists, even symbolically, has injected a new level of anxiety into the Sussex controversy, because symbolism is the monarchy's currency. As speculation intensified online, the narrative subtly shifted. It was no longer framed purely around Meghan's credibility or Harry's choices. Instead, it became about institutional safeguards. What mechanisms, if any, exist when doubt, justified or not, begins to corrode public confidence in royal succession? This is where the alleged DNA rumors entered the conversation, escalating the controversy to its most dangerous point. Claims began circulating that genetic verification had quietly been discussed or even pursued outside the United Kingdom. No evidence has been produced. No authority has confirmed such an action. Legal analysts emphasize that any testing involving minors would require consent, oversight, and formal procedure. Still, the rumors alone proved incendiary. Supporters of the Sussexes argue that these claims cross a moral line, turning conspiracy into cruelty. They point out that questioning the legitimacy of children, particularly children who did not choose public life, is indefensible. Critics counter that the monarchy's unique structure makes uncomfortable questions inevitable when tradition is disrupted. Caught in the middle is King Charles III. Unlike his mother, whose reign was defined by restraint and continuity, Charles inherited a monarchy already under strain. He faces declining public trust, generational skepticism, and a fractured family. The Sussex controversy presents him with an impossible dilemma: intervene and risk validating rumors, remain silent and allow speculation to fester. Royal insiders suggest that Charles is acutely aware of the optics. Any move perceived as targeting Harry's children would be catastrophic. Yet doing nothing carries its own risks, particularly as online narratives harden into belief. The palace's silence is strategic, but silence is no longer what it once was. In a digital age, absence invites invention. Prince Harry's position has become increasingly precarious. Once protected by his role within the institution, he now exists outside it, without its shield, but still tethered to its consequences. Sources close to him describe a man deeply anxious about his children's future, furious at what he sees as institutional indifference, yet aware that his own disclosures have contributed to the current climate. Harry's estrangement from his family has compounded the problem. In previous generations, disputes were contained behind palace walls. Now, distance, geographic and emotional, has replaced dialogue. Without private channels of trust, misunderstandings calcify into narratives. Public opinion, meanwhile, has begun to fracture along familiar lines. Some view the controversy as further evidence of a hostile press determined to punish Meghan indefinitely. Others see it as a cautionary tale about rejecting tradition without fully understanding its function. Few remain neutral. Media analysts note that the Sussexes' long-standing strategy of selective transparency has reached its limit. Interviews, documentaries, and memoirs were intended to reclaim control of the narrative. Instead, they created a paradox. The more personal detail was shared, the more audiences felt entitled to demand answers. The irony is brutal. In seeking privacy, the Sussexes achieved notoriety. In seeking autonomy, they became more vulnerable. And in seeking to protect their children, they found those children placed at the center of an international debate they never asked to join. Legal scholars emphasize that no ancient law is likely to be enforced. No custody action is imminent. No DNA verification has been ordered. Yet they also warn that constitutional systems are sustained by trust, not statutes. Once trust erodes, laws once considered obsolete suddenly regain relevance. This is the quiet fear now circulating among royal advisors. Not that the worst-case scenarios will happen, but that the monarchy has lost its ability to decisively close a story. Every unanswered question becomes a seed. Every silence becomes a theory. For Meghan, the emotional toll is said to be profound. To have one's motherhood debated as a constitutional issue is a uniquely cruel burden. Allies argue that no amount of transparency would ever satisfy critics determined to disbelieve her. Detractors argue that royal life was never compatible with absolute privacy. For Harry, the cost may be lifelong. He has positioned himself as a defender of his family against institutional harm. Yet history may judge whether his rejection of royal norms protected his children or exposed them. As this controversy continues to evolve, one truth remains clear. The monarchy is confronting a challenge it was never designed to face. Not rebellion, not abdication, but sustained doubt in the digital age. And unless clarity replaces speculation, this story will not end with headlines. It will linger. Unresolved, corrosive, and quietly destabilizing. Long after the cameras move on, because in a system built on inheritance, even unanswered questions can become a crisis.